So yeah, my name is Kendra. I'm a twice published author. I've self-published for myself. This is my first book. It's like over 300 pages of poetry, one-act plays, philosophical essays, original photography, and just like cute little sayings and stuff. Here's some of that original photography. This was my first book. It was definitely a passion project, and I loved putting it together. Here's my second one. This is like a 60-page. This is also poetry. It's a prose poem where it kind of goes from part 1 to part 13, and it's a story through poetry. As you can tell with the covers, I like to keep like a certain amount of branding or image in between the books. So I'm going to continue to use the same thing across my books. I think it's important for, you know, as artists or whatever your profession is, that we keep an image and a brand across all of our stuff and all of our merch, even if it's just different colors or like the type of font that you use or like the type of themes that you use, but keeping something that keeps it all cohesive. So the first 2 books that I did are poetry. The ones that I'm working on right now are another book of poetry. So the one I'm going to do with this, next book of poetry, hey you guys, is I'm going to release it in conjunction with my 3rd album. So I'm going to release it as, it's going to include poetry, lyrics. I'm thinking of doing like a photography element. And I'm gonna, you know, I think that's a great thing to add to our merch tables. I've had some fans reach out to me after live streams or after I perform at a show, and they're like, hey, where can I get your book? And I just find that really interesting, that's normally the first question that I get is, where can I get your book? So there's so many different ways. There's a few different ways to get this done, So let's start. I'm going to send you a worksheet after this, but I just didn't want to like bombard you with a whole Times New Roman document of all this info first. So your first thing, oh, we got another one. Hey, Dina, welcome. Hey, so I was just going over my first 2 books of poetry. The 3rd book I'm working on right now is going to be a book of poetry and lyrics, as well as the meaning behind those lyrics, something to add to my merch table and stuff like that. When I do live streams or performances like back in the day, a lot of people would come up to me after and they'd say, oh my gosh, you have a book, where can I purchase your book and stuff? So I always found that interesting. People are really interested in like the niche types of merch for artists. You know, they like us because we're indie. They want to know what else is rattling around in our brain. So right now we're just about to get into what the ideas are. So you want to write a book. It's like, holy shit, where do I even start? So you want to start with your idea. Is it going to be poetry, a song book that can include chords or the meanings behind it, a memoir, nonfiction, self-help, coffee table book? A coffee table book is cool because you can just put all sorts of stuff in there. You could do just cool photography. Dina, I know that you have that beautiful house that you've decked out like an awesome Barbie mansion. It'd be cool to do like a photography book for that, like a coffee table book, as something to sell as like, and something to have as like a, you know, a tangible piece of your project. You can do a standard novel with characters that you make up. You can write a play. Plays are really cool because you take the characters and you just basically write the dialogue for them. You don't have to worry about all the like, the sun was setting out in the distance and young Fredo knew today would be the day. For a play or a screenplay, you just go, boom, we're outside, the sun is shining, Fredo says to the other person. So sometimes people's minds work like that. They're a little bit more bullet point. And plays are cool because you can publish them like a book. You can put them up for production. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with that too. You can showcase a portfolio. Aaron, this might ring true for you since you're in IT and technology. You could do like some sort of portfolio that showcases your design, your work, and have like something that's really nice and tangible. Mind you, they're not super easy to update unless you're doing like an ebook where you can update it and re-upload it on the go. Cookbook, you can do a cookbook too. And these are really fun for all sorts of different types of stuff. Moving on, now we've got genres. Okay, so if you're writing like a novel, you've got romance, young adult, fiction, yada yada, you know that whole thing. So if you're gonna get into the novel mindset, I do have a worksheet, as well as I can coach you on like, who's the character? Why do they exist in the story? Where did they come from? What's the story, the plot, the story arc, and all of that. But today we're going over the bare bones. And then if you want to dig more deep into like how to get a character to facilitate a story to move smoothly, then we can get into that too. Are you gonna self-publish it, or are you gonna submit it to a traditional publisher? Traditional publishers like Random House, Penguin, stuff like that, it's viable to get a book deal. People get book deals all the time. I don't know if I'd exactly say it's similar to a record deal, but they want to know like who your audience is and if you have one built in already. I'm working on a memoir right now, slowly but surely, and I am very much considering submitting it to traditional publishers. But when you submit to traditional publishers, unless you're like a known author or got one of those blue check marks or something, they'll want to have your full manuscript done before submitting it, most likely. Self-publishing is the way that I go with the other 2 books that I've done so far. So the reasoning of why you're doing a book, what part of your life are you in? This is just like getting that inspiration to even start and follow through on it. Because I mean, like, it's like kind of, you know, grueling sometimes to be like, okay, I want to write a book. And it's like, okay, now do I sit in my house and write 8 hours a day? So you need to evaluate where you are. When I decided that I first wanted to write a book when I got serious about wanting to write a book in 2016, I wanted to just go straight into that memoir, like novel thing. But I was like, I also know that's going to take a lot of brain power. So I decided I've got all this poetry. Let me take those journals, type them up, format them next to each other, and create a story arc through my poetry throughout the years. Because I wasn't quite ready to sit down and start writing. But I was ready to get something published and on the books. So this goes into marketing. Is there something that's going on in your life that you can help play up the release of your book? So this could be like a lyric book, song book, something that ties into who you are, your profession, your type of artistry. I wrote down to keep in mind long-term goals and short-term goals. You know, because you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Okay, so people ask me about the writing process. They say, how do you stay inspired? This goes into what we were just talking about. You're gonna wanna choose something that you're super passionate about. Stephen King has this awesome quote where he says, if you write a page a day, in a year you have a novel, or you have a book, because that's 365 pages. So it's like, if I at least write a page every single time I sit down to write in that memoir, and I'm sitting down often to write in the memoir, there's some speed to it. You know, unless I have a hard, fast deadline, I allow myself to just have passion while working on the project. Go easy on yourself during this time. You know, we all have like that little editor from within, so just let yourself write and try not to edit it as much as you'd like to when you first sit down to write. You know, just get the thought process out, get the idea out, just start going. And then when you've got something down, you can print it out, and then you can start editing it and nitpicking at it. you know, because then you let the project breathe and be what it wants to be. Okay, cool. So let me know if you have any questions. I think that we're just moving along nicely. We've got the chat bar over here if you have any questions. So there's like, okay, so let's say you've got some of your stuff down on paper. I'm gonna use my previous books as examples because it's just like kind of a duh thing. So I went from my handwritten journals to typing them up to deciding which ones go next to each other. Like this one about sign language going next to this one about not caring about anything. I mean, how do those really go together? I think it's probably because it's the poem of not caring. Okay, this is a good one. It's a little dark, but it's a good one. Okay, so these two go next to each other because this one's called The Devil's Advertisement. So let's say you're like watching a TV show and all of a sudden an advertisement comes on and it's like the devil being like, hey, come down here, we've got nice fire, it's super hot. That's kind of what this poem is inspired by. But then on the other side, it's about illuminating people instead of undermining them. So obviously these two poems go perfectly next to each other in the course of reading. So after I typed things up, after I typed out the material, this is particular to a type of book that has like poetry in it or something with like brief little snippets. The formatting comes in next. So you've got your book here. And with formatting, okay, so now let's talk about, you've got your idea, you've got some of the text down on paper. What I would start doing then is I would start printing out what you have down, editing a little bit more of that with a pencil, finding out like what the feeling of the book is going to be so you can get an overall picture of how you want it to come across. For example, we've got, here I got some examples right here. This is a novel that is just like a story. It's about like made up characters. I mean, they've got like some real characters, like they mentioned like Leonardo da Vinci or something, but this is just a straight up story, like something you'd read in school or you know what I mean, like made up characters and stuff. So this one's gonna be a pretty standard formatting where it's just like, okay, so you just got like the text, you know? Like they do cute little things, like they'll have little symbols and stuff, but it's basically just the text. Now, mind you, this is a book about art, so they add in pictures of art too. But this I'm saying is a representation of just like straight up literature. This one, you don't have to be worried so much about what the feel and the format is. You just need to be worried about the margins and that everything looks visually pleasing. Then we've got something like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is going to be, so he teamed up with Ralph Steadman, which was his illustrator and artist. So like in the middle of the book, they've got stuff like this, you know, and that's eye-catching. Like, of course, yeah, I skip ahead and like look at the art before I read it and get to it, but it's always so exciting, you know, you give your reader some sort of like validation or gratification for getting to that next page. It adds on flair, like what type of artist are you? What type of writer are you? Are you someone who has your mentality just going everywhere and you want it to spew onto your pages? Then you'll take into account font choices. Like this is like kind of like a new age feel to journalism. That's what that font type reminds me of. Then when you get to the front of his book, I mean, besides cover, love the cover, you've got this cute little guy. The minute you turn the book. When I'm in a bookstore, that's like, I'm just like, I'm already hooked. This is the title page. Dedication, copyright. And then you get into pretty much standard literature, but with that like with that difference. It's similar to the first book I showed you in the way that they both have photos of art. Now this book is, it's a memoir, and it's based in a lot of fact. It's based in a lot of nonfiction. So they are just like information. Okay, so this book was easy to read. It's broken up into 2 parts. The second part was easy to read because it was interesting. The first part was just like information. So I actually didn't read the first part. But I pointed this out because there's not much immediate gratification I get after turning a few pages. I'm like, okay, I'm tired. That was a lot of reading. Self-help books. I love self-help books, mostly because I'm such a nut job, but also because they're so easy to read. So I love this one, You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. So she sits down and she talks about her perspective. She was like working as a freelance writer, doing little gigs here and there for like, you know, what, 50 cents a word or something, and like just working so freaking hard and only making 50 cents a word. So she has this revelation. She's like, well, if I'm going to be working this hard, I might as well put all of my effort into making something really digestible. So not only do I think this is a great read, but I think that it's a great example that you can write about a time in your life where you had a revelation, got through it, because like those revelations, they're important to you. They're also important to other people when you describe the whole scene of how it came about. You know, I was at this concert and then this happened, and then I walked into the arena and then I handed the person my ticket, and then I saw this friend I hadn't seen in years, and I was like, this is crazy. How did I just run into this person at this giant arena concert? Then I go up to my seat in the stands, and then I describe the scene of having this intense revelation. Mind you, I was like 22 at the time, this intense revelation of like, oh, we're all one, and I freaking get it. We're all like one organism moving in the crowd. Now, if I just go straight to the we're all one, everyone goes, okay, yeah, like I've read Rumi, I've heard of Buddha, like I get it. But when I describe in text, I would go into my thought process. I would go into what I was wearing. I would go into maybe what my friend was wearing, what song was being played by the band. Then the whole experience leads the reader to also have that same revelation. So you're not just exposing what it is you found, you're walking the reader through your thought process so they know what you know, and it's almost like they experience it. This can be really fruitful for traumatic events that we go through, because it's a great teaching lesson of kindly or roughly walking someone through your experience and having them learn from it without necessarily having to go through it. Or maybe they went through something similar and they're able to see some light from it. And they're like, whoa, I didn't realize those were 2 of the same things, but now I read, you know, I read this book about the colonization of the Americas, and I was like, I can relate to that a lot. I wasn't alive then, and I had nothing to do with, well, I was gonna say I had nothing to do with colonization, but technically not. We won't go into my lineage. Here's a play. Okay, so maybe I'm done with the examples. Let me just run through these a little bit. It's like a reflection book. This would be cute if you have like different things that you think of that are just, you know, someone wakes up and you're like, September 4th. Yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead. This is a particular book for a particular thing, but you can do like little daily reflections. You can just have something where you're giving someone little insights. Okay, cool. That was great. Let's see what's next. So now you're going to choose, you've got your text, you've got your genre, you've got your overall vision kind of what's going on. Next, you're going to choose a platform. So there's several platforms for I recommend print on demand platforms, because just like all those merch t-shirts that you are like, why did I order so many extra larges? If you get a print-on-demand publisher, then when someone orders your book, they print it, they send it straight to them. You're not paying anything up front. You're just having that portion of the royalties taken out as it's printed. You can also buy wholesale, and you'll make more money buying wholesale, a few dollars. So for instance, I price my book, well, my big book on Amazon is like $16.99. Should be a few more dollars, but whatever. When I buy these books wholesale, I get them for like $7, and then I sell them for like a $20 bill in person, mostly because it's easier to do a 20 than like a $16 or $15 exchange. Plus, it's like I have it in person, but the markup, I'm making more money when I sell them wholesale. Not to mention, distributors take out a big chunk. That's kind of just the way it is. I mean, if you get a book publishing deal or you sell a lot of books on Amazon, that's not really something you would worry about, but shucks, I don't know what to tell you about that. It's just the way it is. The print-on-demand services, I wrote down a few. The one that I use is completelynovel.com. They're based out of the UK, but they've got printers in the US and in the UK. I like them. I just chose them, so that's like the platform I use. They have a free option. They also have a paid option. There are other print-on-demand publishers that are free in general. I just happen to use Completely Novel. They've got a great customer service. They help me create my covers because it just takes a little bit to format everything. Although you can do this on Photoshop, Microsoft Publisher, Adobe InDesign. Once you know what platform you are going to, I know this is fast, but once you know what platform you're going to go, and you can ask me questions like via email or something too, or right up front, whatever. Once you know what platform you're gonna go with, they're gonna tell you what the formatting standards are. So for Completely Novel, they told me I at least have to have this much margin at the bottom and at the top and at the sides. This is a poem, so it goes more to the insides. But then once I knew that adds a new facet of editing. I'm no longer just editing the commas and the spelling and stuff like that. I'm now editing and putting them in the margins. It's so when they print it off, none of the words gets cut off and everything just looks nice and squared away. This also comes into play with what type of font do you want to do. A font is going to be really descriptive of how your reader reads it. And like if their eyes get tired or like if it's something enjoyable to read. A lot of times when I read a book that has text that's just a little bit bigger than normal, I like to read those because it's like, wow, I just read 15 pages. But if it was in this like dense book, it would probably be like 7 pages, you know what I mean? But it's just kind of like the feel you want to do. What do you want to offer to your reader? How do you want to present your message? Okay, the cover. We touched on branding with your image. Like I mentioned, this is kind of like my branding. I actually took it from, was inspired by, no, actually it's the exact replica from the Catcher in the Rye when it was released by Little Brown Publisher. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, so that's kind of like my branding. I went ahead and put myself on this one as part of like the cover art and as part of like the cover art here. Then you do a blurb on the back. This could be a blurb from the book. This can be a blurb of your bio. A lot of times people do a blurb from the book, maybe like a review or two, and then a little bio down here and a picture of themselves. This is more easy to see on this one where I did kind of like more of a standard thing. Got my headshot, little blurb, and another blurb. Lots of blurbs. All right, so we get into, this is maybe where you'll want someone with some graphic design skill to help you. I just did like a really easy cover here, so it wasn't that difficult, but I had someone help me with the back. You can find freelance people on like Fiverr.com. Oh, P.S. you guys, I think that Zoom is gonna sign us out at 40 minutes because it's a free thing. So if you wanna, is this backwards? Of course it is. If you want, I'm gonna put in, if you want to write this down, once we get out of the meeting at 40, just go back on, take a little break, and then go back on and type in this code for follow-up. I definitely will talk over 40 minutes, of course, but here I typed it in the chat too. So you can just go to your Zoom and then we'll take like a 5-minute break at the 40-minute mark, you know, go do whatever you do, and then we'll come back and you can just type in that number. Take your little smoke breaks or whatever. Wow, just barreling straight through this. Okay, great, so you got your cover. I used a good friend as reference. This is one of my friends. He goes by Hobo Stew for the Wandering Soul. So he reads tarot cards. So he did like a daily reflection type thing, where instead of doing the days in particular, he did like 92. Oh, this is cool. When it comes to writing, I've found that less is more approach has always had the greatest impact. So he does like channeled tarot card readings and little horoscope things, but basically they're just like blurbs. So I'll like turn to one. I'll be like, okay, this will be what my day is like. 108. You are who you say you are in any given moment. Choose your words carefully, say something positive, then do it. That's a short one. You know, so it's just like his cool idea. He does channelings and tarot card and like that whole spiritual thing, and he made a book out of his channelings. So I use this as reference as far as like, I think he did a good job with the cover. I mean, it's definitely looks like a homemade photograph, meaning he took it himself. And it definitely looks like a print on demand book, but it's well done. Like it looks good. It's very well representative of what the book is. I think it's neat. I think it's sleek. So yeah, find a author that you look up to and kind of follow what they do. So I noticed he has one of the copyright all rights reserved thing. Okay, so that's freaking important. People love creative stuff. Put your name on it and the damn copyright on it. Excuse my language. Okay, so got the cover. Then you've got your title page. You're just repeating what the title is, putting your author's name underneath. So it's just the title of the book by Kendra Muecke. Here's your copyright page. So I generally like to see it as the second page on the left. You can kind of pick and choose. Some people have it, you know, 2 or 3 pages in, but it's generally that first one on the left. Copyright, put the C on it. Put the year that it's going to be published, not the year that you started. Put your full name, all rights reserved. Then when you sign up with a platform, there are free ones online. There's a few different platforms. They'll give you an ISBN number. So you put your ISBN number underneath the all rights reserved. Then you put the full blurb, all rights reserved. This book or any portion thereof may not be reproduced or used in any manner whatsoever without the express written permission of the author Kendra E. Muecke. Now, I've seen when friends take a photo of my poem and post it online, but they generally tag me and stuff. And like, there's no way for me to know technically if people are doing that, but all I can do is protect myself legally. So if something comes up, I legally have all the rights reserved. I also do this with my officially published albums. Oh my gosh, that's so great. We just got a gift from Zoom. Running out of time, we've removed the 40-minute time limit. Only give me one option. The option was love it. Do you copyright the copyright website or through the USA? I use copyright.gov. Library of Congress, United States Copyright Office. So it's $50 to apply. And you have to have your full manuscript or full sound recordings already done. So it'll say you enter your info and all that, and then you have to upload your manuscript. So your manuscript is basically your PDF file of everything between your covers. Just your full book between the covers. Upload that, they'll approve it. They'll send you one of these nifty things in the mail. And it's covered for, well, it might be covered for life. Yeah, it's official like that. You can also do it for sound recordings. Here's for my second book. Here's for the sound recordings. Let's go ahead and look at this one. Yeah, so here's my first album, copywritten, just like that. It's like 55 bucks or something. And I just like to know, I was thinking earlier of that phrase where it's like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. For me, it was like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's paranoia. But you got the copyright, so it don't matter. Okay. And y'all, people do judge books by their covers. So how do you want your cover to be perceived? And yeah, so I've had some of my books stocked in local bookstores, and I feel like they're eye-catching enough, you know? So just think about what you want people to see when they first pick it up. After you, okay, so you've done your manuscript, you've printed it out. The way I like to print out my manuscripts is you can go to like Office Depot, or you can, if you have a printer at home and don't mind printing off like 50 pages or something, put it into a PDF. And when you're on Adobe for PDF, you can print it out as a booklet so that it'll have, oh cool, I actually have one right here. So these are the proofs I did at home before, for my second book. These are the proofs I did at home. I'd print out like a booklet, and then I'd go through it like I'm just reading it. So this is the front, this is the title page once you open up the cover. Dun, da, da. And I just read it like a book. You can carry it around with you. Plus people are like, oh, whoa, what are you editing? And you're like, oh, I'm an author. And they're like, no way, that's so cool. So you can like edit these on the go. And look, this is just for my 60-page book. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but once you hit submit to distributors, that's it. You know, same with recordings and same with your, well, I don't know about technology, but these are all the proofs for just my 60-page book. I don't know why I have to keep them all. I'm sentimental too. So what I'll do, these are just some editing tips, you guys. When I've gone through, I will get a pencil, first of all, and I'll go through it and I'll circle the little things. So for instance, on this one, I decided to take out a word. Oh, you can't really see that. I decided to take out a word in the middle. And what I'll do is I'll, okay, so this is the way it'll be written. I'll just do here, and I want to change that word to breakaway instead. Then when I go to my computer to put in all of my edits that I've done, I will sign a K by it. So I know that I did it. It's not like anyone else is looking at this, but it's mentally so I know that I entered it on my computer, because when you get 4 or 5 pages down in your edit, you're like, oh my God, did I put that comma in there? And you just go jumping back and forth. So create a little system with yourself where you're like, I did that, I added that. And then on the front of my proofs, I'll write done, meaning I'm done with this one. Once you do the proofs at home or printing them at Office Depot, you'll upload your manuscript to your platform. Once you have your manuscript on the platform, you can order a proof, like a physical, actual proof from the platform distributor printer. So these are proofs that I got in the mail from them. I liked the cover straight up, so there was no worries about changing anything on the cover. Everything printed on there. It looked good. It was clear to read. the awesome part about this is that the graphics printed out really well. You know, you might want to look on whichever print on demand, like people that you use, or whatever printers that you use. You want to make sure, you might want to look if they have examples of how it looks after you printed it out. Because it's like, this is like a full picture on there, and it's not grainy at all. So you'll get your proof in the mail, cover's good, thank God, right? So then you go through this with a pencil again, and you use the same editing process that you used with the one I just showed you, with like, you know, commas here, adding this here, checking off as I added this in to the document. You can also hire a freelance editor or ask a friend to read through it or something like that. A friend who you get along with enough that won't cause a divide between you guys. But you can hire like a freelance editor. You can also use Grammarly online. I'm not a huge fan. Well, I don't know. I tend to like to be more hands-on with my stuff than just putting it through like a self-editing thing, but I know that it's probably pretty advanced and that a lot of people use it, and it's a free online resource. They've got tons of ads on YouTube. So then you'll get your proofs. You've got your proofs. You went through it and you're like, okay, there's some edits to do. So you go back to your original document. You make those edits using the same process I showed you, or whatever process you come up with. Then you re-upload the manuscript. No, make your edits from the proof, print it out a few more times, because these cost a few bucks to order the tangible proofs from the distributor. So print it out a few more times, edit a few more times, try not to lose your mind, re-upload to the platform, get another proof. For this one, I only had to order 3 hard copies before I went to print. And there's only one mistake in here that I am kind of mad about, but I made up for it in this one, just kind of like a personal vendetta. In this one, I haven't come across any mistakes that I wish I would have noticed before print. Saving your material. You've got Dropbox, you've got Google Docs. When I'm traveling, I like to write on Google Docs, because instead of having to worry about, I also bring my flash drive with me, but I like to type on Google Docs when I'm traveling, because it's gonna pull up the same document each time, whether you're on this computer or on that computer or wherever you are. I also keep a flash drive, and I take that saved document and move it over to the flash drive, do a copy of the flash drive every single time, because it's just good to know. It's like with recordings too. I always like to know that there's an up-to-date recording of, oh my gosh, you guys, a brief story time. I'm working on my 3rd album right now, and I use Logic 10 on my computer, and I have my hard drive that has all the information on it. So my hard drive like was half plugged into my computer and half plugged out, and it like flipped out and it cleared my entire recording project. It cleared the whole thing, because it was like the files had become corrupt because it hadn't saved. It was like in limbo. So I was like, of course that wave of like, oh my God, this is it, came over me. And then I was like, you know what? It's fine. I recorded these, I sing and I play the guitar, I can do it again. I still have the MP3 of the guitar, so at least I can work with that. And then I looked on my hard drive and it had saved all the audio files, so I just had to re-upload them and move them around a little bit. It was such a godsend. That being said, make sure you save. Then you'll submit for distribution. Those will go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. A bunch of random third-party vendors will also start stocking your book. At first, I was weirded out about this. I'm like, okay, someone's selling The Politics of Kendra in India. And then I was like, the royalty probably has to come back to me in any way possible. Because they have to order my book from someone to get it. So I'm not quite sure about that part. I know that there's a lot of third-party vendors that sell my books, and I haven't gotten around to emailing them and saying, where are you getting this? In fact, that's actually something I'm going to do. I'm going to email my contact at Completely Novel and say, hey, all these third-party vendors have my books. Are we getting royalties for those? Marketing, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's just like marketing a single and marketing a, there's so many different avenues you can do with this. If you save as version, okay, Babylon says save as version A1.2, A1.3. So do you mean it's like your first project, the first version of your project, and then you could do like, do you want to share what you mean by that?
Unmute.
Oh, you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Yes. So every time you have a session, whether it's like I don't know about book sessions, but like saving it as a version so that your software, like even if your hard drive frags itself, you have a version to go back to that was your last save.
Right.
Because it has to timestamp and make a copy of itself. So instead of just saving it and closing it, you save as and then save as.
Right.
Every single time.
Is that taking up just as much space on your hard drive as like a full project?
I have a terabyte, yeah.
Yeah. Worth it. Totally worth it.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any questions? The last part I have written down is go to your local bookshops, go to your local gift shops, bookstores, random places will stock cool books with cool covers. I've got a bunch of other details on marketing and like developing a character as like a role, but I think we went through like a ton of good info today. So I'm gonna take some of your questions and then see where we go from there, maybe do some other talking points. The best way to get a publishing deal. Okay, okay, so there's a few different ways to get publishing deals. You can, all right, so you're gonna wanna have a name enough that depending on the publishing house, you'll wanna have a name enough to get the meeting. You need to get the meeting with them first. So there's a few different ways to go about this. You can start submitting portions of your stuff, like if you write short stories or if you have like a part of your book that you can take a little portion from, you can submit those to literary magazines. That gets your name out there, and then you get in the scene of like writers knowing writers and publishers knowing publishers, and it's like going to like a music conference and everyone knows who you are after that. So if you submit to like literary magazines, if you become active in writing blogs, if you follow a lot of writing Instagrams, basically like getting in the industry, getting known in the industry. Now that takes a lot of time, and it's like, I have 10 other things going on. So something that I've done, plus sometimes when you submit to literary magazines, they want to make sure that your stuff hasn't been published before. I don't personally really understand why that's a rule, because it's like, it's a piece of content for your literary magazine, but I think it's because a lot of them are competitions and stuff. So there is the idea of building up your name. You can do that through writing for other blogs. You can do that for, so for instance, for me, I've started writing for some online music blogs for like music reviews and stuff, so that I could throw my hat in the ring for like getting my own music noticed by some of these really big blogs and stuff like that. Another way that you can go about a publishing deal is like a cold call, where you do like an email with who you are, what you bring to the table, almost like you're pitching yourself for an interview for press and publicity, or like however you pitch yourself when you submit yourself for stuff, and then add on what your idea for the book is, throw in some pictures or some samples of the content. You can also start, it's kind of related to the music industry in this way. Once you start meeting people in the industry, they lead you to the next person, which leads you to the next person. Then you've got the way of, so that'll help you get your foot in the door, because you want to get that meeting so you can pitch them your story. So if you're going about that way, where you go in there and you're pitching them a story. So a lot of times people who get book deals, who are like well known, whether it's like, or coming up in the scene, whether it's like Rachel Ray or Marie Kondo. I don't really know if anyone knew about who Marie Kondo was, that tidy up lady. But I certainly didn't know who she was till she got her book out there, and then everyone's going nuts over the tidy up book and stuff. So I'm thinking she must have had some certain amount of clout in her own industry, and then was able to have her PR, press people, publicist, get her a meeting with whatever publishers. Then when you go in there, you want to do the whole betting war thing. I mean, be nice about it, but you're like, oh, we met with these 3 other publishers too, and they're excited about the book. Those kind of tactics. And in that circumstance, you would be pitching them the idea of a book, and they would give you an upfront paycheck, almost like a record deal does too. And then you go off and you write your book. They handle the marketing and all that. And then whether you get a second book deal with them is dependent on how your first book did. This has a lot to do with like pre-sales, because you want to get on the top of Amazon's, like hot book list and stuff like that. So there's that route. Then there's also the route of already having your book done and sending them the full manuscript. So what you'll send them, it almost looks like a script for a movie. You'll send them the manuscript that has just the documents, just the straight up documents with the clips on top. Of course, you do a cover letter, but you include the full story. You will definitely want to have your stuff copywritten prior to sending in your manuscript, even if it's a big publishing house. Then that's kind of similar to the cold calling thing, because you don't know how actively they're looking into reading the manuscripts. It's almost very similar to a record deal in that way. But there's also hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller publishers too that would gladly want to bring people on for a book. So it just depends on like what type of publisher you're going for, and kind of like who you are and what you bring to the table and stuff like that. How do you find different publishers? There's several different ways. So of course you can look on, here, let's look on the footnotes of different people. So this is Steve Aoki's memoir. I actually went to a talk on this. It was pretty cool. And then he signs the books. He wasn't very talkative after, but that's okay. This is cool. This is his front cover. Love that. Love the coloring. So he's like, of course, here, to Kendra, right? So he's, of course, super well known, but what I'm bringing up here is the fact that you can turn to the title page and see who printed it. So this was by St. Martin's Press. I've never heard of them, but they exist. This person is by the Library of Congress. It is a nonfiction book. Let's see who the self-help book is. So it's kind of like when you're like, who's this artist produced by, and who's this artist, what's the record label? You can go to the song liner notes and the song credits and stuff like that. So it's the same example of going to liner notes. This one is by Running Press, which I haven't heard of, Perseus Books, and Hatchet Book Group. So I know she got this book deal before she was super well known. So these might be good publishers to check out. So there's that type of thing where you can go to people who are like similar, whether like I knew this writer because her story talks about how she was a no one and then she became someone. So I know that she's starting at a level that is somewhat, okay, I don't want to say I'm a no one, but somewhat relative to the fact that like I'm known in my own field, but I'm not, you know, but she's starting from somewhere more similar to me. So that would be that kind of relation that I could do in that way. And then you can just do like simple Google searches. But the thing is when you're submitting material, I guess if you're doing like Google searches and submitting to publishers that you don't necessarily know straight up, like Penguin or Random House or Little Brown Books or whatever, I would want to send them like a pitch versus sending them your straight up material. We need to be careful with that type of thing, just because that's the way that sometimes creative processes work. Was that helpful? Let me go to, awesome. Do y'all have any of the other questions? I'm gonna browse over my other notes and make sure we covered everything I wanted to. Of course, we can go into like subplots and like motifs and like symbolism and stuff, but that's like really into the like actual structure of writing a book. Like what's the twist, the story development, the resolution. So if you're interested in like actually, you know, how to write like something like the Catcher in the Rye, I can help walk you through that. I've got a whole worksheet on it that asks questions like, what do you want the reader to remember? Do the characters have dimension? Are you describing in your own voice or in the character's voice? Are you writing first person or third person? So if you want to know that, let me know. Then on this other worksheet, it's super easy to do ebooks. I didn't necessarily touch on this too much, but you can do a book that you also provide as an ebook, or you can do one that you just do as an ebook, which is a little bit less high stakes or whatever. And you can make shorter ebooks and they're super easy and accessible. It does go into all that planning and all that stuff that we went over. You still have to do that, but sometimes the weight is a little bit lighter if you know it's just going to be an ebook or something like that. Also, if you're just selling like, so have you ever gone to someone's website and they're like, hey, thanks so much for joining our email subscription list. We're going to offer you a free ebook with this. Since they're technically just emailing through their MailChimp or through their email system, since they're technically just emailing you a PDF ebook, they can, okay, sounds cool. Thanks so much for joining in, Babylon. We're about to wrap up too, I think, because we've been here about an hour. But if you're just sending out like a general PDF, then that's something you can update all the time. So you can, it's lower stakes in that way. But if you're going to do an ebook, you can also present it onto Amazon and get it listed on Amazon. That's not as easy to edit because there's a fee for re-uploading a new manuscript because they consider it like a relisting or something like that. Ebooks are fun too because you can add a lot of photography in and the resolution is super high because people are reading it on their laptops. Oh, and for your platforms, wherever you're going to host your book from, I didn't know this prior to doing the politics of, but it turns out, I think this printer only prints in black and white. So it ended up working like quite beautifully for like my photos and stuff. Like it still has a lot of dimension and stuff to it. But if this was something like a coffee table book with the photos and it was like all about the photos, I would have used a whole different publisher because this book is more like, you know, instead of like a coffee table book where it's all about the photos and stuff. Okay, Okay, I think this is maybe our last topic, and I so much appreciate you guys being here. So, okay, so you got the title page, copyright page, dedication. Who are you dedicating this to? Table of contents. You're gonna want to double check when you edit, make sure you've got all the numbers right for your table of contents. Page numbers right. I like to throw a blank page after the table of contents, so there's a clean break in between when the book starts. I did another dedication page, another blank page, then it starts. At the end of the book, I did an acknowledgements page, so I thank my freshman year teacher for introducing me to poetry. I just talk about some other sentimental things that influenced and inspired the book. Then I get into the brass text of acknowledgements because I used photography. So I needed to reference, I also am really particular about this kind of stuff. I wanted to reference every single, okay, cool, I'll call you back. I wanted to reference every single person in here who was in the photo or took the photo and stuff like that. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but you know, legally, I like to offer that same sort of copyright opportunity towards them. So I, you know, let me give you an example. I even said like who the poem was inspired by. Words from brother, inspired by Harrison Mickey, which is my brother. You know, so like whatever acknowledgements, I like to be really particular. If something was inspired by a certain rock song or a certain movie, I like to reference those things. Also because I have this like cute little fantasy where my rock star friends are looking through it and they're like, oh, that reminds me of my song. And then when I get to the back, it's like, thank you, Led Zeppelin, for inspiring this song. And then I referenced that the cover art is inspired by The Catcher in the Rye. My headshot on the back is by Bjorn Kormel, who's a great German photographer here in LA. And then what are the poems I featured? So I like to reference everything. Once you've got everything, go through. Again, this is part of the editing process. What do you want to reference on each page? I included page numbers. And then I think that this, with me covering that, using that on the cover, I think since I referenced it, it's technically good in that way. Okay, I'll let you guys go in a second because I got a phone call. Oh, because we're done, but I got a phone call coming in too. Another thank you page and a biography or about the author. And that's that, and thank you. Personal touch has an ISBN number, which automatically is printed by the printer. And next step is your Nobel Peace Prize. Thanks y'all so much. I recorded this, so I'll send it to you. And it's so nice to meet you, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Kendra. This was great.
Yeah, did you like it?
Yeah. I just got to run as well, so.
Beautiful. Thanks for being here, Erin.
See ya.
Bye. Bye, everyone.